Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I am here joined today by Fiona Mccoss, and I'm very excited for this conversation that we're about to have. So could you please introduce yourself to the listeners and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Thanks, love. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I am a women's mentor and wild feminine embodiment facilitator and facilitator trainer. And I basically get high off supporting women back into the truth of who they are and walking with them back into the wild and supporting this unapologetic journey of embodied rewilding. And that can take many routes and it can be expressed in many different flavors, but it tends to come through the shameless reclamation of sexuality and sensuality. And in that, a big part of that is reconciling woman with her lost dark pieces.
I love that. Mm. So much about what you say, I'm just like I feel that response in my body because so much of like my work, but also so much of the work that I do with clients, sexuality is a big thread of it. And I think there's a massive misconception that sexuality equals sex. But in your work, I see through your content and stuff, it's like so much more than that. So could you like speak to when you say sexuality, what that means for you, what that means for your clients?
I mean, I'm happy that this is being brought up because I think in the same with pleasure, we have to spend a while like uncoupling pleasure from sex and uncoupling pleasure from genital pleasure. And the same with sexuality. When we break apart, the word sexuality, in it, we also find eros and creativity. And in it, we also find life force. And then in that, we find, life and death and the cyclicality. And I was speaking the other day as well around this subject. Like as a culture, we're so obsessed with the intensity and the quick hit. And so when we think of sexuality, we think of like, if in an archetypal lens, we think of like the whore or the slut or but we tend not to think of it as just a woman empowered in her magnetic current or a woman empowered in her erotic current, and that gets to be free from the male gaze, but they're so intertwined that I think a lot of women feel, oh, I don't feel sexy in my body, therefore I am not sexy, or oh, I can't experience genital pleasure, therefore I'm not a pleasurable woman, therefore I'm not able to be pleasured. And it's like we have to really spend time unpicking these threads and these stories that we've inherited around sexuality and pleasure and actually just come back to like looking at a little baby as soon as they come out of the womb. Like they're a little beautiful, sexual, erotic, pleasure filled being. And then over time, as we become adults, we learn these constructs and we learn these shoulds and these shames, and we slowly start to, in a way, both desensitize and also hypersexualize ourselves. So it's a really like funny contradiction of like just almost like leaving our body to seek something else. And actually, what we really need to do is slow down and just resensitize what actually coming home to ourselves means. And in that, we find that we are coursing with sexual energy. In that, we find that we are so abundant in pleasure, but because we kind of put sexuality and pleasure on this like pedestal or something that someone has to give to us or help us achieve, it can be really difficult for us to have a true relationship to it when so much of women suffer through sex and pleasure, so many women, it's like one in three or one in four women have been sexually abused. It's these numbers are staggering, and so it makes sense that we as women as a culture have a little bit of like a standoffish approach to sexuality, yet at the same time we have this like leaning in and this curiosity because of the importance that our culture that yeah the import it's really funny. It's like a both and it's like sexuality is both shoved into the gutter and repressed into the shadow, yet it's also like glorified
Yeah.
and hypersexualized. And so you get kind of caught in the middle of like wanting this expression, but all you see is like the pornographic false expression of sexuality. And then when you try and explore the truth of your sexuality, you end up in the shadows because you're like, oh my God, there's no space for my truth to be in this world. So it's a really nuanced and complicated realm, but I think that there's so much authentic curiosity entering this space now that we see great shifts
Yeah.
happening in the collective.
Mm. Yeah, I really resonate with like the nuances of it for sure. And just like I think even growing up, like you said, in a society where our sexuality and our bodies are not ours, like we're taught, aren't we, to kind of observe ourselves and to play into that male gaze and desire that male gaze. And I think a lot of the initial work around sexuality or the question that can often open up the conversation that can lead me into sexuality work with clients is like, what's your relationship like with your own sexuality? And they will just be like, never ever even thought of it that way. And I think so many women don't realize that their sexuality is theirs. So it's like it really is a reclamation of being like, what's your relationship with touch with yourself? What's your relationship with your own pleasure? What's your relationship with love making in whatever way that is to yourself? And even those questions can be so insightful because women aren't taught to do that or think like that. So powerful. You said then about the archetypes, and I'd love to hear a bit more about the horde archetype because I know you speak about it in your content. And it's interesting because I think that word horde is even so like loaded in society. So what is that and how do we like embody that? How can we bring that into our lives?
So one of like she's like one of the OG archetypes. Is
Mm.
but she lives in the dark feminine field as well, and she there's so much stigma and so much misunderstanding and misconception around who she is. And in actual fact, her role dates back to, centuries and millennia ago when in the goddess cultures, Eros, it was like people went to temple to pray to Eros, to the goddess, to the mother. And part of this prayer often involved sexual energy exchange where these women were seen as the goddess incarnate, and men would come and offer money to these temples to pray to the goddess and to enter into the sacred union as a way of meeting and merging with blissful, transcendent states. And then come, the as soon as kind of patriarchy really took hold and Christianity really took hold, basically squashed all of the goddess cultures, burnt all of the temples, and turned them into male god figurehead religions. And so these women who were sacred priestesses became outcasts, became sold into slavery. Their bodies were no longer seen as holy temples, but their bodies were seen as being ruined. The virgin was venerated, the untouched woman, the holy woman was this new image of the holy woman was created. And so any woman who really had deep connection to her sexuality and who knew that by merging with this powerful eros was a gateway to the divine, anyone who believed that was essentially cast out into the fringes of society. And so that's really when, you hear of the virgin whore or the Madonna whore complex, to come. I mean, that was coined by Freud. And in the 1900s, but it really holds true to this construct of how men started viewing women as either you could be mother or virgin or you were a whore. There was like no in between. It was very black and white. And so the whore archetype essentially just was associated with women who were interested in sexuality or who knew or who enjoyed seeking pleasure from and giving pleasure from their bodies. And we know as women, deep down, even if we don't care to admit it, that we all enjoy pleasure, that we know that our pleasure is sacred. We all know that our pleasure is our birthright, but we've been told through our church, through our families, through our school, through ex-boyfriends, or through whoever made those lasting impressions that our pleasure is wrong. And so we live this conflict within our minds, within our psyche of being like, oh, how do I stay pure? But my body is longing for these experiences. And this is really the whore rearing her head. This is the truth of your whore. Everybody has the codes of the whore within them. This is an archaic primordial blueprint that we all hold in our lineage. And some women are more embodied in this essence and frequency than others. Some women have a real fight with the whore in them because they're not really maybe perhaps ready to admit that she lives within them.
Mm.
But ultimately it's, we all have these flavors and these archetypes within us that just need to be reawoken and spoken to, and a relationship deserves to be developed. And the whore is one of the most powerful, and I love playing with her, not just in the bedroom, but in all of life. She really invites us to put pleasure on the pedestal, to see your body as an altar that deserves veneration and worship. And it's not just about the sex, but it's about so much more. It's like, how can I merge with the divine through my vessel? And even in, when I work with the archetypes in business, we kind of see this modern embodiment of the whore become the slut. And the slut's kind of like this cheeky, this this cheeky kind of presentation of the whore, in that she is unapologetic in who she beds and how she beds, and what she gains from it. And again, we see so much slut shaming in this world through our own internalized misogyny, through our internalized patriarchy, but also through, the male gaze, and how the slut has kind of been created as like a persona through pornography. And it's like, it's like that same mother whore complex. It's like the man will cheat on his wife with a slut,
Mm.
but he will never marry a slut. There's these same stories that kind of hold true in our culture, even if they're not said out loud. But it's like, ultimately we want to reconcile, like, yeah, but we can be both, and like we can be all of the feminine expressions, and we can flow in and out and play with them all at different times in different ways for different outcomes. And um it's not to judge or shame anyone's expression, because we see this rife within women too. We slut shame each other.
Mm.
That's not our voice, but this is the internalized misogyny, the internalized patriarchy that we've got so good at believing, because that voice has kept us safe.
Mm.
But ultimately, some of these, what needs to shift so much in the culture is like women seeing other women in their sexuality and in their sexual power, and celebrating that, rather than judging or shaming her just because the woman who might believe that doesn't feel confident in herself.
Mm.
Um, but she's a really beautiful and fascinating archetype, and I really like to just remind listeners to, like, divorce anything that you think these archetypes look like, because it's not about like, what does your one woman look like, and you go on Pinterest and you look it up, or what does the whore look like, and you think you need to have a boudoir photo shoot and you need to have sexy lingerie or be a size 8. It's like, it's not about any of that. It's who you are embodying in that flavor of the feminine. It's not about the sex toys in your drawer. It's not about the fucking kinky shit you do behind, in your bedroom. It's not about any of that. My whore will look very different to your whore, will look very different to her whore, and nobody's whore is truer or better or more powerful, but it's all about coming into what is my unique flavor of this ancient blueprint that helps me sit with my or in my erotic power. How does she want to express? And to me, I think that is a huge part of my work. It's just like stripping away the veils of who we think we need to be and who we think we need to look like, and just fucking show up and express unapologetically as who you are, because that's the biggest permission slip for ourselves and for anybody else.
Yeah. I'm thinking as you were talking about that, like my heart actually feels like it's nothing to do with the bedroom, and it's everything to do with like how I mean she will come out in the bedroom, but like how I just like the word that I want to say is how I essentially just like fuck life and make love to life as like this unapologetic woman, and just like really, when like you want something and you're like, I'm gonna go and get it. Like that's how it had that, like I feel the aliveness of that in my body now, which is really interesting. So when I hear you explain that, I'm like, wow, that's so fascinating, because we we associate the whore with what you've just said, like the slut or the bedroom, but actually the initial thing that comes to mind for me is not even about that at all, which is so powerful and so interesting. Um, and I imagine that brings up like a lot of contraction for women, just even like saying these words, and almost like on the path to own their inner whore or their inner slut or their inner wild woman. It must bring up like so much contraction because of those connotations. Like, do you find women feel unsafe at the beginning to embody their inner whore because what they associate it to mean?
I mean, all kinds of things. I tend to find there's most curiosity around the whore and the seductress
Yeah.
of all of the dark feminine archetypes, because even if you think back to what our mums or our grannies or our aunts might have told us, it's like, even in the 60s or the 50s, back in the day, it was like your skirt had to be beneath the knee, it couldn't be too short, where you could have your cleavage out, you had to, there were just very set ways of how a woman had to dress in order to still look feminine, but not look too feminine, not look too sexy, because then she'd be a whore. So there is just so much contraction because of these very real and remembered sayings or lessons that they've received from women in their family that have made them feel afraid to truly step into and claim their whore. But deep down, they're like, but I know that she has gifts and power and magic to give me, because like you said, it's not just about in the bedroom. And I love working with her in business too, because it is this like shameless claiming of this is what I want and I'm going to get it. And it's like she knows her value. And so if we also kind of take the whore into the analogy of the whore with the money exchange, it's like she fucking knows how to price her offerings.
Yeah.
She won't, discount herself for a client. She'll fucking wait for the person who's ready to give her everything and then maybe tip her at the end. And she's the one who doesn't hide behind um fear, but she's the one who like spreads her shit all over the internet, because she's like, this is what I got, this is my gifts, like I'm just gonna sit and wait for you to come get it, because I know that I'm what you want. And so there's this real power in tapping into our heart as women in business, because we don't have to be small and meek and afraid of taking up too much space on the internet. But when we really channel the heart, it's like slapping your poster up on the wall with your number on it and being like, call me bitch, like you know where to find me. This is my per hour rate. So we get to be quite cheeky and playful with it as well. And it's like this reclaiming of where she's been um commoditized and almost like cheap, and like we get to kind of play with that energy and bring it back and be like, okay, well, you make it look seedy, I'm gonna riff on that. and I'm going to take it up a level, and I'm going to spread my legs wide for everyone to see and be like, this is me, like this is all that I have, this is who I am. I'm not sorry for any of it.
Yeah, I love that. You know, it's like we get to change the power play with like desire, don't we? So it's like that the whore will be very desired by men, but it's like we get to, and then we get judged if we like act on that desire. But then it's like in the whole archetype, the way you were talking then is like we get to change the narrative about desire and we get to play with desire and we get to be in that energy of desire. And I think that's so big as well, linking it to like pleasure and these qualities that we speak of is like to know that we are desired and we can be desired by life, but also for us to desire life as well at the same time is like that's such a expansive embodied sensation to play around in. Um, and you speak about the dark feminine, and I'd love just for listeners to you for you to explain a little bit about the dark feminine, the certain archetypes that fall under the dark feminine.
I mean, really simply, we can just tap into the dark feminine as being everything the feminine is not supposed to be.
Mm.
That's how and we access her. And this is very different to shadow. This is where the dark and the shadow get really confused because of how, um, because of the fact that the dark feminine was not allowed to be expressed, her manifestation has become a shadow. But because we all yearn the dark feminine, we all try and access her through some way. And so maybe the truth of the seductress comes out as manipulative because we don't feel truly safe to be in our seductress. So we try and like pull the strings from behind the scenes because we don't know what the true embodiment of her feels like because we don't feel safe. So she ends up in the shadows. So she comes out as something unhealthy. And but the dark feminine essentially is being in the feminine in your body, is connecting to your sexuality, is connecting to your blood, is connecting to your wellness. It's this primordial ancient current that is woman. And so where we see the feminine as being very like love and light and the mother and the maiden archetype, especially the maiden is the version of woman that is the most idolized in this world. We see how everybody's so afraid of aging, everybody's addicted to Botox, everybody's fixing their faces up to look like a permanently young woman. And it's like we're so afraid of being a naturally maturing woman. And so all of those qualities fall into the dark feminine. And we find the wild woman, we find the whore, we find the seductress, we find the witch, the hag, and these to me are the most powerful
Oh, for
aspects
sure.
of the feminine, and no wonder they've been so repressed because
Mhm.
they're so threatening. And so there is such a yearning and also a contraction when women begin to learn about this almost like this half of them that they've been made to forget and that they've kind of been complicit in forgetting along the way. And there are obviously archetypes that you have a favorite, whether a chosen one or just like, a biological blueprint that just feels the most alive. But we all have access to and we all can embody the dark feminine through us, and it can take us into different realms and it can take us through different ways. Some women are just born to be a witch. They're born to play in magic, or they're born to make potions and work with herbalism. Some women are born to be the whore. And so it's like really understanding the more like self-inquiry and the more embodied you can become, the more kind of um like truth bombs will just go off in your mind and in your
Yeah.
body of being like, oh, this is what I want. Oh, this is where I want to be. Oh, this is what I should be doing. And to me, so much of that is the dark feminine. It's like this wild truth that courses through women. And I mean, I was like awakened by my wild woman, and it was like when I heard the howl, I couldn't unhear it.
Mm.
There was no way I was going back to corporate. There was no way I was staying in that relationship. There was no way I was staying in that life that I was living. It was like such a fucking wake up call to just come back to the root of who I was and almost like figure it all out like from scratch.
I love that. How did your, because I really resonate with the wild woman, and I feel like last year was my initiation into her for sure. And I'd love to know your story because I think it's fucking powerful. The wild woman archetype, like she, like, wow, yeah, she will make you see things that like maybe you've never wanted to see before. And I think when you were talking then in the book Women Who Runs with the Wolves, in one of the chapters, she talks about how we compartmentalize parts of ourselves and we put them into the dead zone, and they essentially like along the way we lose pieces of the wild woman, and like returning back home to ourselves and embodying her is to bring those pieces out of the dead zone and to face them. And that kind of that really landed for me then when you were saying about that. So how did she awaken you and how did she find you? What happened?
It was also just before my Saturn return, so if anybody knows, if you've not been through it yet, good luck. But it's like the
Brutal.
ages between like 27 and 29 when literally like your life can just turn upside down. And I was in a very unhappy relationship with an emotionally, I'd say like abusive. I'd go as far as saying that in hindsight now. Partner, I had a mortgage, lived somewhere I hated, and had a corporate job, and was had a very like sensible looking life from the outside. I was like 25, 26, and it was like slowly I just started waking up, being like, this can't be it. Like
Mm,
this can't. This is not it for the rest of my life. Like no, there has to be something more than this. And I could just slowly feel just something like shaking me from within. And I didn't really know this. I didn't have this language for it at the time. It was only kind of, I would say, till I was in my third, like 31 or 30, I could look back and be like, oh, that's when it started.
mm.
Oh, that was when she started calling. And I found the book Wild by Cheryl Strayed, which is about, yeah, this everybody should just go read it. It's just such an incredible book of this woman who like changes her life, turns her life around, has a backpack and goes on this like huge initiation climbing, like walking through the mountains by herself, and has this whole awakening. And I was just like, to me that was such a permission slip of like, not that you need to go and buy a backpack and climb over some mountains, but like you literally have the power to change your life. Like nothing has to be the same forever. And I just love the fact that it was called Wild. And it was just like, I just kept feeling, I was just like being dropped like breadcrumbs of being like, follow these breadcrumbs, like come out, like follow me into the wild from this domestication, like from this sterile, horrible, stagnant life that you're in. And then anyway, lots of series of events happened. I did actually buy a backpack and I went traveling and I met my
Yeah,
life
I did
partner.
as well.
And everything changed and we I mean I totally changed my career. Became a yoga teacher. I studied feminine embodiment coaching and was getting my online business, and it was kind of when we were in Costa Rica for a year and I was really living like the wild woman life. We lived in a jungle hut with no walls. I didn't wear a deodorant or shave my armpits for like 3 years, and I was like so rejecting of anything Western and, you know, very clean living, like made my own toothpaste and like everything was so natural. And so I went like fully wild, and I feel like I had to swing so far that way to then like when we came back to the UK and like re-entered like normal life, the pendulum swung back and I had to find a way of still feeling and living a wild life, but in a different way. And so, okay, I've started shaving my armpits now and I wear natural deodorant, but this is to say like it's not about the expression. It's not about like how wild can you be to prove that you're wild or to prove that you've been initiated with your wild woman. It's like how honestly can you follow like this call to your authentic self, because that call is like it's all the time. And
Mm,
so it's like every morning you heed that call. It's like, am I choosing to show up for my authentic self, or am I going to do something that's not in alignment? Because yeah, my wild expression has looked very, very different over those years. And it's not to say that she's not been with me. She's been with me the whole time, but it's like we then after a point she guides us less. We just show up as her. And so it's up to us to kind of really like be in devotion to this wild current. And it isn't about the, how you look or if you think you need to be barefoot running around in like Guatemala or where the fuck ever you think the wild woman will take you. It's like just being really honest about where am I not in alignment? Where am I lying to myself? Where am I still caged? Where have I cut out my tongue? Where can I bear my fangs? Who do I need to speak to? Who, what untruths do I need to like tear away and claw apart? And really, like, what are you fighting for? Like, what are you hungry for? Because so much of the reconciliation, I think, that coming home with the wild is learning that you don't have to be starving.
Yeah.
And for me that was huge. And even up to my 20s, like when I really started following the wild woman, I was still in disordered eating, like I was abusing exercise, and that started from my teens. And it was really when I went fully like I'm in devotion to this wild woman, I don't know what's happening, where I'm going. My eating disorder just went away, because I was like, how on earth am I going to starve myself when I'm like so in touch with my hunger and my desire and my body? It's like now I'm thinking, no way would I ever starve myself. No way would I shove my fingers down my throat. Like to me, that feels so violent to myself. And I think that when the more we walk with her and the more we really kind of just give ourselves over to our natural, authentic self, the more we just naturally fall in love with ourselves.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
we will never starve again because we're just like in tune with this. And I mean, food wise, I mean, like life wise, I mean, business wise, I mean, love wise. Like we're just so connected to this sense of like satiation or fullness or hunger. And if there is something lacking, which there still can be, it's like, what am I hungry for? What am I not feeding myself with? And then you get this like accountability, and then that kind of cures the damsel and it cures the good girl. So like the wild woman is such a powerful archetype um to soothe and heal. And I don't like using the word heal so much, but when we can self-heal a lot with the wild woman.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, she definitely helped me like heal last year, but I also feel it's interesting because I had a anniversary recently of a trauma, and I went to therapy on that day, and like embodiment therapy, and I was just sat with my mentor Matt, and I just had this like I like kind of worked through all of the heavy stuff that was coming up, and then there was a lot of shame, and I just kind of had this moment, and I was like, you know what, I think I'm stopping myself from fully like letting go of the shame, because to let go of the shame, I step into the power of how that traumatic incident completely shifted who I am. And I said to Matt, like, it's almost like that trauma that I experienced and that year after it, because it was a trauma related to my sexuality. So I was like, it's almost like that trauma then becomes so tiny and insignificant when I turn towards the power that it will give me and like the impact it can make. And instantly, like, my whole body just come alive, and I opened my eyes, and Matt was like super emotional, and I was like, that trauma was an initiation from the wild woman, and I had to kind of go through that and then go through everything else she led me through to get to this point. And that is just so, like, for me, like, I just feel the aliveness in my body, because I think sometimes when we follow the whisper of the wild woman, it's not always easy. But like you said, you have to show up in like that authenticity. And then after that session, I was reflecting, and I was like, just the shame dissipated. And I was like, no one is ever going to fucking shame me or silence me ever again. Like, no one is going to do that. And it's like someone lit a flame to my whole body, and I felt it. And I was like, this energy that women can tap into is like, it's insatiable. Even when it's the rage, right? Or even when it's like the anger or advocating for yourself or pleasure. There's pleasure in your rage, I think. Like there's power in your rage, obviously, which we know, but there's so much like pleasure and desire that can come from these other emotions that that wild woman will lead us to. I mean, I personally found anyway. I don't know if you resonate with that.
No, I resonate, yeah, with everything you say. I understand exactly the language that you're using and I know exactly what that feels like. And there, it's not to say that our trauma doesn't affect us, but and it won't still kind of come up. But when we realize it's like we just gain a different perspective because it's
Yeah.
so easy for us. And this is how we've been kind of like pathologized and, been um portrayed as women to just to stay weak and to stay small. And so that's very convincing when somebody's, experienced trauma because being a victim can is easy to enable, if the man's the perpetrator and the woman's the victim, and it can be very easy to stay in that dynamic of staying small, staying quiet, staying meek. So as soon as you take that power back and honoring what happened to you and honoring the trauma for sure, it's like no way in hell are you gonna stand for that again. Like no way in hell are you gonna allow yourself to be or feel a victim again. And it is like it can literally happen. That change can happen like that.
It's so beautiful. It's like I say this when, oh, because I'm retreating and stuff, I bring in the wild woman and I say to them, like, you have a wolf inside of you. And even when I do like anger work with women in sessions, because that's like a whole emotion that I find a lot of women struggle to tap into, I will say to them, like, find your baby, like, find your growl, even if it's a baby growl for now, but like, use your voice. And just even that, like, permission and the way they can really start to embody that and like use that wild woman to start to find like their baby growl. And I'll be like, I fucking love when I hear women just even if it's like the smallest of like I'm like I love that because you're awakening like this part of yourself that now is she's fucking powerful and you can advocate for yourself when you start to awaken this wild woman. And for anyone listening, there's that book that you mentioned, and then there's The Women Who Run with the Wolves, which is an amazing book. And I found the chapter on seal skin, soul skin profound for my journey last year when she talks about like how society, how relation, everything that we're saying, women lose their soul, women lose their skin, and we go on this rediscovery of getting it back and our vitality and our voice and that sense of belonging. So I would definitely recommend people read that chapter as well. And then I just want to touch a little bit on pleasure because I think I know we spoke about it, but I would love to kind of ask you how women can start to bring pleasure into their lives more. So from like my work, if we think about it just simple terms, when we think about nervous system work, I always say to like orient towards pleasure, which can be anything. It can be like that tree plant in the background is pleasurable. My nails are pleasurable for me. This jumper, everything can be pleasure. But I'd love to know from like your perspective how women can start to turn towards that.
Yeah, I love that. I was going to say the same thing. I think it's so important just to remind people that pleasure gets to be really simple. And actually, we have to start with the desexualizing of pleasure because for so many women, especially women who have sexual trauma in their history, they can't even access the word
Yeah,
pleasure.
for sure.
So it's almost like, okay, well, how can we then reframe what pleasure means to somebody and choose a different word for them? And as I just to circle back on something I said before, and that we're such a culture that's addicted to the intensity and to the quick hit that we're sometimes too busy for pleasure. And so firstly, we need to slow the fuck down.
Mm,
And a lot of what we need to do first is like resensitizing our bodies to receive pleasure, to receive a sensation that feels enjoyable in the body. Because if we're so mind over body, we're not going to fucking notice all the amazing, pleasurable things that are around us. And so when so many people say, oh, I'm too busy for pleasure, oh, I just don't feel, and it's like they're thinking orgasm or they're thinking sex, and they're actually discounting the 99.9% of the time that they have sat at their desk or with their kids or in the car or taking their dog for a walk, where they could have little tools and trinkets around them that could drop, that could activate their senses, because that's essentially what pleasure is how can I create a sensation in my body that I have kind of identified as nice or as enjoyable. And so I'm just looking around my room. I have an empty a chocolate cup that says "Fabulous Bitch" because it's my favorite mug, and I have like three sprays, nice sprays on my desk. I have a scented candle and sitting against like scarves and things, and then my room is painted a nice color. And it's like so much about our pleasure is environmental. And so even just making your house feel nice, even if it's not your favorite house you've lived in ever, but it's like, okay, well, how can I start to make the room around me more enjoyable to be in? How can I maybe buy nice linen on my bed so that I can't wait to get into bed and have a little snuggle? What like shampoo do I want to put in my hair so when I wash my hair, I can smell my hair for 3 days afterwards? Tiny things like that. I think people overlook as being like, oh, that doesn't count as pleasure. And I'm like, it does count as pleasure. And this is what I think so much of just redefining what pleasure means and just giving access back to us of more pleasure. This is what pleasure activism is. It's just being in your body more to receive the world around you. It's like being, when we're the muse or when we're the lover, it's like, how can we be in this dance, this like reciprocal exchange with life? Life is like giving us so much yumminess all the time, and we can curate a life around us that can give us so much yumminess. But if we're so distracted or so disconnected or so busy, we're not open to receiving any of the pleasure, and then we burn out. Our nervous systems are jacked the fuck up. We're dysregulated, etc., etc. And so much of it is like, well, sometimes you have to be a bit boring and like put something in the fucking schedule. If you're that busy, be like, okay, I'm gonna carve out 10 minutes every 2 hours where I'm just gonna do something that feels good to me. Could be going outside, could be stroking your cat, could be lighting a candle, spraying your favorite perfume, whatever. And then slowly by slowly, you'll start to like program yourself to seek more of those experiences. And then it just becomes like you live a pleasurable life. And then it's kind of like the wowman piece of being like, how could I not live a pleasurable life? Like, why on earth would I be sitting in doing my work wearing something that makes me feel uncomfortable? Why would I be living in a house or surrounding myself with hot paintings that I hate?
Mm.
Shit, like stupid shit like that. It's like we really get to just decide and change the way how we want to live and who we want to be, and it gets to be really simple. And I think what gets overlooked is that people just think it has to be so complicated or sexual, or I need a partner to feel more pleasure. It's like, no, baby, you could be single for 10 years and have be in the most pleasure than somebody who has a partner for 10 years. It's all
Yeah.
about changing and reframing how you receive and how you define pleasure.
Yeah, love that. And I also, something come to mind of like how you can also, like when your body is alive, how you can receive pleasure from like not other people in terms of a sexual element. But I go to a dance class on a Saturday, like a heels dance class, and it's full of all different types of women. And recently, to start the class, she was like, right, I'm going to put a sexy song on, and one by one, you have to go up to the mirror and you have to seduce yourself, because I'm noticing people feel uncomfortable owning that, like the sexy songs that we're doing. So I felt really comfortable doing that. So I done it, and then I was watching all of the other girls, and my like whole body come alive watching them, and like my yoni was so responsive in terms of the fact that it become like moist, and it was not even like a sexual turned on way, just to see these other women go through that process of being in the mirror and being in their bodies. And it was so interesting because I was like, oh, I noticed that like I'm quite activated in my body because it was pleasurable for me. So because that sensation of watching those other women cheerleading, like just seeing women just like own the fuck out of that experience, that for me was pleasurable in my body. And I was like, that is so interesting. Like it's amazing. And I share that story because I think it shows that, even just observing life and observing other women be in their energies and all of these things that we're talking about is pleasurable for your inner feminine. It's like a permission slip, and she's going to be like, oh, I love that. And I feel like as women, when we're together and we all embody and own that, it gives so much permission. And in the retreat I done recently, we done a sexuality workshop and we wrote letters to our yonis. And I demoed it and I wrote my letter and I shared it and I chose to share it naked. And I got the girls in the room and I undressed and I read my letter out. And at first I was so nervous. And then as soon as I took the thing off that I had on, like the t-shirt, and I just took a breath and I just relaxed into being naked in front of these women, again, all of that charge completely dissipated. And the other women in the room were like, there's so much permission in just seeing another woman naked. Like it's we thought it was going to be this big thing, seeing this other woman naked, but actually just seeing you in it, it's just so normal. And I think it's just like, isn't it amazing how much pleasure we can get and permission and access to our inner wild woman when we bring these things into space and we make them quote unquote normal because they are normal.
I think that's a really powerful piece as a leader to, go first and hold that space and model the vulnerability because,
Yeah.
that's what leadership is. And as a facilitator, as a space holder, you do have to go first and kind of set the tone and to do that and to welcome that into the space. When we say, oh, everything is welcome, sometimes that can feel really fluffy, but it's like, okay, well, I'm going to lean in and go first and share something from my heart.
Yeah.
And because it's like normalizing what we have been taught is the taboo. It's desexualizing the female body. It's like we were sucking our mom's boob as food, and then
Yeah.
why all of a sudden are we not allowed to see boobs and boobs are shameful? It's like nobody would be alive if boobs were not, like it's so strange.
Mm.
So I think the more naked women, the more naked bodies we can just have around and that aren't looked at as like seedy, because even, when you go to like a nudie beach on holiday or something, there's still this like, oh, hee hee, we're gonna go to a nudie beach. Or like you go to Spain, you're like, oh, I'm gonna get my tits out. And it's like these things are just so normal in a culture, but it's like it's almost like your little girl comes out and you can just feel these like repressed like beliefs being like,
Yeah.
hee hee, I have to have a little giggle before I can take my top off. And
Yeah.
it's like there is that the part of us and and in women to acknowledge and to really honor that still feels like that, the nerves or the childishness, because until we see everybody doing it and until it is normal, it's still going to be, there's still going to be for, I mean, fucking free the nipple censorship on Instagram and, the censorship of women's bodies is absolutely insane on social media. Like there's still a ways to go. And I think it takes leadership like yourself in the retreats of being like, well, I'm going to just go first and get my tits out and stand here naked and show what vulnerability is, because that is like the doorway and the permission slip for so many women who will receive that. And
For sure.
yeah,
And that was the vulnerability. So it's interesting that you like immediately picked up on that because I said to the girls like I could read this letter out and it would be comfortable for me, but I'm not in a space to like my wild woman doesn't call for me to always be comfortable. And like you said, as a leader and as kind of like a trailblazer for other women, you do have to lean into that edge of the wild woman. And I just that call to just do it naked. And then it was just so normal. And then it was beautiful because one of the other girls ended up being naked outside having a coffee and she had so much shame around her body. So for her to be in that and be celebrated was like when you see the ripple effect of this work as a practitioner, as a woman, it's like that is fucking pleasure, right? So like every single day when we turn up to work and we see this, it's like pleasure hits all of the time and it's amazing. Um and last thing I'd love to just get your the juice on is there's a post that I saw on your Instagram and I loved it. And it says, I don't need a man to feel like a well fucked woman. And I think when I saw that, I was like, that was the essence of what I wanted this conversation to be today. So is there anything you would like to tell the listeners about that piece of content?
oh, I remember that piece. Yeah, I remember that one. I mean, I think it kind of covers what we've already been speaking about. And when we want to be and feel like a well-fucked woman, we have to hold ourselves accountable to what that is. Like, there's it's so easy to fucking create viral shit online, and it's so easy to just like say stuff that sounds good. And
Yeah.
it's like beneath that, though, what are you showing up for? And to me, it was kind of like a call to action for women to be like, okay, bitch, you want more pleasure? Give it to your fucking self.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to feel more confident in your body? Stop seeking it externally. Stop waiting for a man to tell you, oh, baby, you look beautiful. It's like, I think it's really this flipping of like the damsel and the good girl into this, wild reclamation of your erotic self and being like, I'm gonna find out, I'm gonna spend days, months, years in self-inquiry and self-exploration to find out what really turns me on. And again, this doesn't have to be sexual, but just how can I create a life that I love to show up for that feels like I am being, satiated in every which way. And this is also, the term like orgasmic can be quite like popular and float around in like these worlds as well. And it's like orgasmic doesn't need to mean that you're fucking writhing around the floor having a fucking orgasm, but it's like that sense of like that your whole body feels like alive and fizzy and tingly and like you've just had this ecstatic experience. And yeah, it can be that explosive and it can be that yummy, but it also gets to just be like, how can I create a life to me that feels orgasmic from the moment I wake up, from like the choosing of my favorite cup and the sipping of my favorite hot chocolate to the furnishing my room or my whatever with my favorite sheepskins to putting on like my favorite sexy pair of underwear. So every time I go to the loo or not wearing any underwear and you're like, oh, and you get this reminder of who you are and why you've chosen to show up in that way. And it's the same as like, you don't need anyone else, man, woman, anyone to make you feel better than who you are. And it is just this, yeah, I just felt like, and yeah, I like to bring women to their edges as well. And a lot of that is doing a lot of shadow work and really, inviting them to see, because this is what I do with myself as well, to see where are you fucking bullshitting yourself? Like, where have you got the rose tinted glasses on? Like, where are you saying one thing and then showing up as something else? And it does take a little bit of like spice, and maybe the tonic tastes a bit bitter, but it's like it's all fucking medicine.
Yeah.
And so if you really want to have this wild orgasmic, pleasure filled life, it's like, okay, fucking say so and show up for it. And not wait for somebody to give you it on a fucking platter. Not wait for somebody to teach you the 10 steps, but be like, I'm actually going to figure it out for myself. I'm going to like learn some tools and tricks, fine, but I'm not going to wait for you to give me a perfect formula because that's not how it works.
I love that. It's making me think of, I decided this today actually, but recently I've had this like little shadow, not even a shadow part of me, because there is a part of me that wants to be in a connection and in a relationship, that finally feels ready to just be held by a man in the way that I fucking deserve after all of these years. And I feel really ready for that. And I noticed there's this like desire for connection. And instead of me like going out, because I actually want to be celibate this year, so I just really want to focus like on me, and pour into like my experience and myself. So instead of me like doing the thing that society and my friends tell me I should go and get a hookup or go and get a situationship, get on a dating app, I'm that's not where I am right now. So I actually woke up this morning, I was like, right, I want pleasure, I want connection, I want intimacy. I'm gonna do like a 28-day sensual like intimacy just kind of thing with myself, and every single day that is my top priority, that is my non-negotiable, and I have to be intimate with myself, I have to be sensual, not just orgasm, but I have to bring in like touch and all of that stuff. And that is that is like what I want women to understand is like just when this part of us or some part of us might come up and go, oh, I want connection or I need validation or I want intimacy or I want an orgasm. Like I want to go on this journey and be like, okay, this thing that I desire, like let me give that to myself because then when I do meet a man, I'll be like babes, I can give myself the things. So like, are you going to match me? Because like I'm not shrinking myself anymore. I am not relying on a man to kind of give me what I need. I want that to step in and feel like a mutual exchange. So I also feel like all of this work, like you've just said, um, we can feel that way without needing someone else to give us it. And then when we do welcome someone in, like it's fucking powerful because we know what we need and we know how to give ourselves that. So that just enhances it when someone else can give us it as well, which is beautiful. Mhm.
When you go out seeking it, there's no like neediness.
Yeah,
It's just like it's coming from like pure sovereignty, pure magnetism. It's coming from overflow without this feeling of like I have a missing piece and I'm seeking for this like piece of the puzzle to feel whole and complete. It's like, nah, babe, you're already whole. You just got to like learn how to feel the wholeness.
yeah, and hold the wholeness and not be afraid of your own power in that for sure. Love that. Tell me what it means for you to be wild, wise, and whole. I ask every person this to end the episode.
The first thing that really comes up is to feel sovereign and to feel like I have choice.
Nice.
Because when you don't feel wise, when you don't feel whole, when you don't feel wild, you don't feel like you have choice. You kind of feel like everything's happening to you and you may feel a bit lost and ungrounded, but when you truly are embodied in your wellness and when you know that you are born this wise woman and when you remember you are whole, it's like, duh. Of course, I'm fucking sovereign. Of course, I can advocate for myself. Of course, I have choice. And I think that's what so many people forget that they actually have choice.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. Where can people find you and how could they work with you?
Come find me on Instagram. That's my main space at Fiona Mccoss. And I'm running some retreats this year, which Wild Honey in Greece in May and Wild Eros in Ibiza in September. And yeah, I'm beginning a membership in a few months' time. So lots of new places to come and play with me. I don't know when this is going to come out, so I'll leave it at that. But you can come and yeah, drop into my DMs if you're curious. And yeah, I would love to know what of this conversation resonated the most. It's always fun to hear from the listeners to feel what landed.
Mm. Yeah, thank you so much. I've loved recording this episode.
Thanks so much for having me, love.